In the dimly lit corner of a lavish Los Angeles club, Chris Brown leaned back in his chair, a drink in hand, surrounded by the buzz of laughter and music. The night was vibrant, but beneath the surface of the glittering party, a darker narrative simmered. Chris had been in the industry long enough to know the facade that many artists maintained. The polished images, the perfect social media posts, these were often just the tip of the iceberg. Yet, as he sat there with a few close friends, he felt a growing urge to reveal what he had seen in the shadows of fame. "People think they know us," he started, glancing around as if to ensure no unwanted ears were listening. "But they don't see what happens off camera. Diddy and his crew? You wouldn't believe the lengths they go to keep their image intact." His friends leaned in, intrigued. Chris continued, recounting a night that had left a lasting impression on him. It was a private party at a mansion, the kind where the elite mingled, each person a brand unto themselves. Diddy, with his magnetic charisma, was the life of the party, but Chris noticed something else lurking behind that charm. As the night progressed, he saw a different side of the music mogul. In private conversations, he overheard Diddy discussing potential business decisions that veered far from the moral high ground. There were whispers of manipulation, of artists being coerced into unfavorable contracts, their dreams exploited for profit. Chris shivered at the memory. "It's not just about music, it's about power," he said, his voice low. "I watched as people were belittled for making their own choices. It was like a game to them. They didn't just want to control their careers, they wanted to control their lives." His friends exchanged glances, a mix of disbelief and understanding. In a world that glorified fame, the darker side often went unmentioned. Chris knew that exposing these truths could lead to backlash, but he felt an urgency to share his experiences. "It's not just Diddy," he continued. "There are so many out there playing with people's lives. You see the parties, the fame, the glamour, but there's a cost to it all. It's all part of the game." As the night wore on, Chris decided that he had to be more than just an observer. He wanted to use his platform to speak out against the injustices he witnessed, to shed light on the unspoken truths of the industry. The conversation drifted to lighter topics, but Chris's resolve remained. He knew the risks, but he also understood the power of his voice. In an industry that often silenced those who dared to speak out, he was determined to be an exception. The next morning, he woke up with a clarity that felt almost electrifying. He would share his story, not just for himself, but for those who felt trapped in a system that valued profit over people. With that, he started to outline his thoughts, preparing to confront the darkness he had witnessed, ready to illuminate the truth lurking behind the glitz and glamour of the entertainment world. As the sun rose over Los Angeles, Chris felt the weight of his decision pressing on him. The city, often bathed in golden light, now seemed to reveal shadows he had previously overlooked. He spent the day reflecting on the stories he had gathered from his peers, artists who had felt the sting of betrayal, who had watched their dreams twist into nightmares under the industry's relentless gaze. That evening, he met with his team in a small, private studio. The air was thick with anticipation as he shared his vision. "I want to create a documentary," he said, his voice steady. "I want to shine a light on what really happens behind the scenes." His team, initially surprised, quickly rallied around the idea. They brainstormed names, themes, and potential interview subjects. Chris wanted raw, honest accounts from those who had been in the trenches, other artists, producers, and even former associates of the industry giants. As they mapped out a plan, Chris couldn't shake the image of Diddy from his mind. The man who seemed larger than life at parties now appeared as a symbol of the darker truths he aimed to expose. Chris decided to reach out to others who had experienced similar encounters. He called up friends from different corners of the music world, people like Tanashi and Tyga, artists who had faced their own struggles. He wanted their stories, their truths, and he needed their courage. To his relief, they all agreed to participate, understanding the importance of shedding light on the industry's hidden aspects. As the weeks passed, Chris's vision began to take shape. They filmed interviews in various locations, intimate settings that felt safe enough for vulnerable conversations. Each story was more shocking than the last. Tinashe recounted moments of feeling overlooked and undervalued, while Tyga spoke about how contracts were often crafted in ways that trapped artists financially. During one particularly poignant interview, Chris spoke with a former label executive who had witnessed the behind-the-scenes dealings firsthand. The executive, now disillusioned with the industry, shared tales of manipulation and exploitation. "It's like a game of chess," he said. "And the artists? They're often just pawns." The more stories Chris collected, the more determined he became. The documentary wasn't just about his experience, it was a collective voice against an industry that too often silenced the very people who brought the music to life. Finally, the day came when they gathered all the footage for editing. Chris sat in the studio, watching the raw interviews unfold on screen. He felt a mixture of pride and anxiety as the weight of their stories hung heavy in the room. He knew that releasing this documentary could lead to backlash, not just from powerful figures like Diddy but from those who thrived in the status quo. As the last clips were cut together, Chris took a moment to breathe. He was at a crossroads, unsure of how the world would react. But deep down, he knew he had to move forward. The truth had a way of freeing those who felt trapped in silence. With a final push from his team, they set a release date. The day before the premiere, Chris held a press conference, announcing the documentary and the stories it would unveil. He was met with a flurry of questions, many aimed at sensationalizing the drama rather than understanding the message. "Why now?" a reporter pressed. "Because it's time for change," Chris replied, his voice unwavering. "It's time for artists to reclaim their narratives. We're not just here to entertain, we deserve respect and fairness." As the documentary premiered to an audience eager for a glimpse behind the curtain, Chris sat in the back, heart racing. The room filled with gasps and murmurs as the stories unfolded, each revelation sparking discussions among viewers. After the screening, social media erupted with responses. Artists rallied behind Chris, sharing their own experiences and echoing the need for reform. The documentary was met with both praise and criticism, but more importantly, it ignited conversations that had long been buried. In the aftermath, Chris felt a shift in the industry. Conversations about artist rights and mental health became more frequent, and he found himself at the forefront of a movement that sought to protect creatives. Though the journey was far from over, Chris realized that his voice, once a solitary whisper, had become part of a powerful chorus demanding change. And as he stood among his peers, he knew he was finally stepping into a new era, one where artists could reclaim their stories and reshape the future of the music industry.